Hey everybody, sorry we're running a little late. We were kind of joking around a little bit before.
Well,
Forgot
we're
about
late because my colleagues here spent a few minutes bullying me about the Denver Broncos performance over the weekend.
Well,
So
it was necessary. Being the two teams that I root for over the years have one team has made it to a Super Bowl the last time in the '90s, and then the other one has made it to the Super Bowl the last time in the '80s. And it's been a lot of bad years. So it's nice when Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans. Now they can never have a good year both in the same year, because that would be God. God is not going to give me that much pleasure in one year. But one of them can be good for at least 1 year. And I don't even want to say the word Super Bowl because it will be I'll curse myself. Anyway, so we apologize for the delay. We did get word right before the call that Chuck Cook is expecting to be back next week. So we're excited that he said it was going to be early October. And I guess next week is early October. So right on schedule for when he told us. So we look forward to him rejoining us. But we got our names on the screen, so you don't. But I'm Greg Siskin in Memphis, Aaron Hall, Denver, Jesse Bless in Boston, and we're going to talk about as we do every week what's happening with our cases that are pending, and then talk a little bit about there were some whopper developments in immigration law in the last couple of days, including even today with the new visa waiver country being announced. But why don't we go ahead, Aaron, and let's start talking about the 601 cases.
yeah, not a lot to report as far as action since last week. So the 601A case, this is the one in Seattle, that has stayed still pending the action at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the 601 case, no action except for one individual plaintiff getting dismissed because their waiver was thankfully approved. But other than that, we wait. So no action on the cases, but I don't know, Greg, maybe you can talk a little bit about what we learned about the Heart Service Center over the last week.
Yeah, so the Heart Service Center had I guess a listening session or just one of these public relations things, but they did tell a little bit of information that was of use. The main thing is, I think, for the perspective of the plaintiffs, is that I think this litigation is getting its message across, and they're now probably so that they can, when it gets to actually having to convince a judge that they're being reasonable, they are making some big promises right now regarding getting processing times down. So they are promising that by the end of the fiscal year that starts next week, so the fiscal year starts on October 1st and ends on September 30th, they are promising that by September 30th of next year, when the fiscal year ends, that they are going to have these cases down to a 1-year turnaround. Now, what that means for that's a promise that we've seen over the years, where they do things like last in, first out will be. I mean, I expect to see that kind of game playing, where they will take cases out of order and say that, hey, we're approving cases in a year, because they're going to take cases that are filed October 1st, get those cases approved by September 30th next year, and say, hey, we kept our promise, and basically screw everybody over in the that's sitting in the backlog.
What they also love to do is they'll take like 100 or 200 from the top that are last in, and they'll approve them, and then they'll play with the math, because it'll reduce the median processing times. They love doing that. Yeah, I mean, it's convenient. They set it right around the election. Yeah, goals are one thing. They have a goal of reducing the complete backlog, I'm sure, if you ask them. So I don't put a lot of stock into it. It's certainly the right move from a litigation perspective, right, and public facing perspective.
Well, I can tell you that we had 3 more cases in our plaintiffs approved over the last 7 days. So we're at 36 now. And they were all February 2020 filers.
I will say, I mean, the litigation, hasn't really gone the way we expected. But if nothing else, I have, just talking with attorneys and people across, it definitely made them aware of something they were trying to bury. And there's been a couple of I guess, meetings with USCIS that our friends over at AILA have had, where they basically admitted that when they came in, they tried to triage things and shifted people to focus on certain applications at the expense of others without naming. You can do the math and know that, like, they wanted to get N400s out the door. They wanted to get EADs.
There's a political reason for that, which is it's good for the incumbent party to get as many people naturalized into their administration, except if you're the anti-immigration political party, in which case they want to keep the numbers down. But generally speaking, it's usually people vote for the president that was in office when they were naturalized. There's a long history, if you go back, you know, for many, many decades, that when before immigration was a partisan issue, that used to be the case. But sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, no, I just wanted to note that I think last week we talked about the quarterly statistics through the second quarter, and during the last week they released the third quarter statistics. And so we know that in the third quarter of the fiscal year, that's through June 30th, I believe, they adjudicated 4,200 some 601As, and that leaves 138,000 plus pending.
How many do they get in it? New ones are coming in?
Yeah, they got 8,500 during that quarter. So still
so
losing.
It's still more build. The backlog continues to build even if that with that.
And that processing time. So these processing times are different than what they post on their website for processing times, because these are actually the median processing times for what has been adjudicated. And the processing times for these was 43.4 months. Just looking at these numbers, if they say they're going to be at a year processing times 1 year from now, that is a gargantuan undertaking. And so I hope that they're right. But I welcome their goals and view them skeptically.
I think our clients, our plaintiffs are a good data set to test what's reality. We know that they're going in a month. They seem to be now have settled in with our plaintiffs into some kind of date order for them, and they're barely budging off of February, but we pretty much, I think we can reliably say, based on our data set, February 2020 is probably where the national number is. It is possible that they've basically segregated off our plaintiffs into their own pool, and they're just working on them on a separate line. But my guess is probably that's fairly close to where the normal numbers are at this point. And that's so we're probably, I guess, at 40 some odd months, if you're looking at that as what the norm is.
And for people who are in the 601 case, wondering why I'm not talking about data for 601s, it's because they don't release it in a very useful way. They group other waivers, including I-212s, I-191s, I-192s, 601s, 602s, and 612 into like a waivers category, and then lists all the data together. So it's just not helpful. I just don't know what to make of it. So that's why I don't talk about that data in the same way.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the 601 cases. Do we have any news on the Ukrainian case? I don't think we've had any change since last week.
No, I mean, related to the Afghanis, they did kind of open it up for new registrants for the TPS. I think I don't know if we talked about that, but that's a huge deal. I actually missed it myself. And then a client of mine was like, "Hey, did you see this? I think I'm eligible now." And I was like, "Yeah, wow." I mean, a lot of people who have special immigrant visas they redesignated for both Afghanistan and Ukraine. Redesignation, I think there's sometimes confusion on TPS with redesignation and extension. So extension just basically keeps people that are already in TPS. It gives them the ability to continue in TPS every 18 months. So we have like Central American populations that were designated in the 90s, and they just get every 18 months an extension on that. Redesignation means they reset the clock so that
lots of new people are eligible. So with Ukraine, it was, TPS, they said it last year, I guess, I don't know, it was March or April last year. It's when they did the initial TPS designation. And that was going to run out in this, around now. And a lot of people were hoping they were going to do what they did, but the expectation was they certainly would have extended all those people in TPS for another 18 months. But by redesignating and changing the dates, it allows everybody who came in over the last year plus to be able to qualify for TPS as well, which is a really nice benefit to qualify for and has a lot more certainty than parole. Parole is always litigated. They have a hard time litigating TPS, except when even a president wants to get rid of a TPS program, has a hard time doing it, as Trump found out and his administration. So the statute gives the president very broad authority in TPS. So if somebody wants to challenge Biden for implementing TPS for a specific population, good luck to you, because pretty much it's whatever the president says is safety or war or environmental disaster or natural disaster. There's a whole lot of discretion there. What I don't know if he could do is designate subpopulations to say, for example, I want to give TPS to the DACA population in particular. If that program went away, whether you would have to do the entire country and say I'm going to have to do all of Mexico, all of these countries, or whether you can define it down. I thought that there might be some possibilities for that when, for example, there's a civil war going on in a country and only one part of the country is impacted. It's possible, that if it was possible to just designate people from a certain geographic area of a country, but I don't know president's ever tried it as far as doing something narrower than the entire country. But Biden has been probably more willing to use TPS than I think any other president since I don't know how long TPS has been around. But that's so for the Ukrainians, that's the big development for them. If you are Ukrainian, there's no downside to applying for TPS as far as I can see. TPS runs parallel to other categories that you're in. So you don't have to give up, for example, humanitarian parole. You don't have to give up if you're in a non-immigrant category, you don't have to give it up. You don't have to, it doesn't interfere with the ability to apply for a permanent residency application. It pretty much is just running on its own track. So that's my general advice is to file for TPS if you're eligible. You guys have anything else you want to add on that?
No.
Okay. I don't know if there's, in the Go case, it's, we still don't have any news on there as we have passed 1 year on that. We've talked about that. That's that's one that, who knows when it comes down, that decision is going to be probably without warning. So
we're periodically, each of us, approached by plaintiffs asking for us to do something or file something with the court, and we always say the same thing: there's nothing we can do. So I got a few requests like that this week, and that's the responses. So if you're seeing this, there's nothing we're going to be able to do.
The court doesn't need to be reminded. They know what they're working on. There is a reason it's delayed. It's either because they have, they have a million other cases, all this January 6 cases that are working their way through, and they're not in a hurry to issue this, or there's a lot of indecision, in the court. There's not a lot of agreement with the judges. There's a lot of reasons. I'm sure they're being lobbied internally. I don't know if you can really lobby them, but maybe with the other judges and all that, there might be some feedback coming. I don't know whether there's some worry about it coming in bank after the decision.
I hate to create a problem, but I will. One of the things that can happen, and in my appellate experience, I've argued in every circuit, and I've argued a lot. And I spent more time in appellate court than district court, and I've seen this maybe once where you have 3 judges that can't agree, and what that would mean, they have to. I mean, I did a lot of removal work on appeal, so I mean, I think in that time, I think that the board's decision would be they can't remand, so it's left. The decision is left. I don't. I'm not so sure that could happen here. I mean, maybe that they would say, listen, we don't see enough to reverse, so whatever was done below is going to have to happen, and here's 3 separate decisions on why we think our position is right, but we're hung. We just don't know.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, it would be good and bad, because I think there's a lot of different cases here asking for a lot of different things. It'd be phenomenal for Gomez, where I'm I'm not so sure that that's what's happening, but I think there is. You had 3 different judges with very different views. I mean, honestly, they did not agree on much. Henderson did not agree. Katsas had his view of the world, and the chief judge had his kind of leanings towards what should be done. And, none of this is surprising.
If that happens, then what happens as far as the appeal of it goes? Like if the government's unhappy,
it would go en banc. They would have to go en banc. They would not want. I mean, the panel.
So en banc, for those who don't know, is all the judges basically here.
Yeah, a sufficient number. Every court kind of has their own local kind of rule on what an en banc panel would look like. But certainly going to be about 9 would probably judges from the DC circuit. I don't even know if there are 9, but it would be 7 or 9, and it's just. You have to kind of rebrief it, because it may be. Now, again, I mean, this is what happens. You put all these cases together. It may be that one of the cases they're hung on, or 2, or the class, and you don't know. So we could speculate all day. I mean, the reality is, unless Biden wants to drop the guns and take the appeal away and agree. It's up to the court, and the court has infinite amount of time to do what it thinks is best. And
have you ever had a case take this long?
I had one in the 9th Circuit way back where it was like 18 months. I did. It was a criminal case, and it was courts where it was like that removal push where things were getting to the 9th Circuit. I mean, it was nuts, and I remember it was like right after the board started doing summary dismissals, and there was so many petitions for review. And this was like a really thorny criminal case about a California statute. And yeah, it took a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at some questions, and then we'll take a break from that and talk about some changes that happened this week. So Daniel asked about this last week, and regarding 601 waiver legislation. I have to just express a lot of skepticism that Congress is going to pass anything on immigration anytime soon. The only bill I think that has a reasonable shot right now is there's a healthcare immigration bill, and that's largely because that's the only one that you can get Republican co-sponsors along with Democrats, and usually they get equal numbers. You have a couple of problems that are just sort of fundamental problems with Congress. One is that the House has the immigration subcommittee basically populated with a bunch of really radically anti-immigrant members who seek out that committee because that's what they basically campaign on, and that's their big issues is, give us more wall and more border patrol, and that's the only thing they care about on there. So that is that being said,
I will come on and do the StreamYards for the rest of IMMpact Litigation's history in no shirt with makeup if we pass 601A. I mean, there's a better chance of me being drafted by the Red Sox next season.
IMMpact is now an OnlyFans product.
Hey, swipe right on your screen.
Well, so you have that problem. Now, granted, things do slip into appropriations legislation. So that's, for example, how we got the Ukrainian stuff that they were litigating over, and that great piece of legislation. That's how that got done. So to the extent immigration stuff works, gets passed. That's how it happens right now. Now, with that said, we're in a very interesting period right now because our government is about to shut down in 3 days because the House can't come up with something that they agree on, and the House majority for the Republicans is super thin, like 3 people right now, I think is what they're at, and they're probably going to, at the end of the day, I'm envisioning this is the end of the line for Kevin McCarthy, because he is not, I don't see him actually getting. I think his big finale is going to be getting a couple Democrats to or a bunch of Democrats to vote and call it a bipartisan thing, and then promptly have to resign because his speakership was going to be, he's not going to have the votes for it after that. But you could see some immigration things work their way in potentially into some kind of compromise bill if some Democrats want to push on it. Afghan Adjustment Act is one of the ones I think that there's more and more Republicans that are signing on to that bill. The healthcare stuff could be, so there could be some minor things that are in there. 601, I'm not seeing that is probably one of the big priorities. There is a possibility we could see something for the DACA population there. I'm doubting it. But that is to the extent that, at some point when McCarthy realizes he's going to have Democrats, the Democrats are going to want something in return, because basically they can just sit on their hands and, and say, you're the majority, you're in charge, unless you want to give up your speakership to us, and let us run the show. So I don't know. So sometimes it's possible some immigration stuff could sneak into a bill that works its way through that way. The Senate is a lot easier, obviously, because A, the Democrats have it, and B, there's like reasonable Republicans in the Senate that they usually can get on board for certain kinds of immigration bills. But that's so. With that said, I would not hold out a lot of optimism that until after the next election, the Democrats, can pick up a couple of seats. They don't need many, and 1 or 2 more seats in the Senate. The things change a lot because they will be able to. The Senate basically can't pass immigration legislation because of the filibuster. The filibuster is on the chopping block, but they need 1 or 2 more votes for that to happen. And once they get to the point where bills can pass with a simple majority in the Senate and a simple majority in the House, the Democrats actually had control of both houses and still have a Democratic president. That's a lot of ifs, but not that unreasonable. Then you would actually see immigration bills moving again, I think. But not. I don't think we're going to see anything until early 2025, if that's going to happen. Okay. Let's look at, we kind of talked about that already, about that. Aaron, you had a question specifically about the most recent 601 approval in addition to the January, February 22 approvals from last week. What do we know what the new approvals, the new approval, what their filing date was?
Tiffany, that was the same approval that we talked about last week. It was just dismissed from the case officially this week. If you give me a minute, I'll try to pull up the.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Emily, more changes with the so we're going to talk about some of that stuff in a second. Thank you, Emily. What are we waiting for 601 waiver? Aren't we supposed to be fighting to speed up our cases? Yeah, basically for that case, we're waiting on actually the court to let us. Obviously, the big issue in that case is going to be the motion to dismiss. And that's basically the trial before the trial, the trial by the paper trial, where the judge will make a preliminary determination about whether the case moves forward or not. And when you win on that part of it, then usually the government is kind of sees the writing on the wall, and you have a much more productive discussions with them regarding settlement. So that's the main thing right now on these cases. all these cases we're talking about is waiting to pass that major roadblock. Once we do, then there's a lot of things that are possible.
But if he wants to know like exactly, we're exactly waiting for the Ninth Circuit to decide a case. The Ninth Circuit is an appellate court, and right now,
the 601A or the 601 wait.
I thought he was talking. Well, 601. I guess it's ambiguous, right? I think for the Boulay case in Nebraska, we're waiting on the judge to issue a decision on the motion to dismiss.
Right.
For the 601As, of course, we're waiting for the Ninth Circuit to come down and the Fourth Circuit really, and decide whether the courts can look at delays in these cases. And I think our case is going to rise or fall on what the Ninth Circuit. Well, it's definitely going to rise or fall on what the Ninth Circuit does. Yeah, we're stayed.
Yeah. We did get a question about whether yes, any of these cases can be a no on here. That's the whole point, and the fact that it's taking this long, I think it doesn't tell you which way they're going to go, but it could be that, that there's somebody that we could lose all three of them. You never know on there. But that's, we have optimism when we take these cases that we wouldn't be doing these, arguing these things if we didn't think we had a reasonable case to make.
Well, we won. I mean, we won. But
that's right. We won at the lower court.
Yeah. And that was on summary judgment. So, I mean, Judge Mehta, I thought he had a lot of courage to do what he did. Of course, some other cases that are connected to ours didn't go the same way. And, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, honestly, I think I was naive when that case started. I mean, to think about how hard it is actually to win a case in DC. I mean, Jesus,
So the heart webinar, is that posted somewhere? I don't know. Probably.
I think it was an attendee only thing. I don't know if it was recorded. Was it recorded?
I don't know. We just had a couple of people that were tuning in on it. That were taking notes. It might be online. I think they do post a lot of those videos. But they may clean it up before they put it online. I don't know if they do it right away.
I think just two things on that whole thing with the heart. I mean, two of the things that kind of just make me, I just don't have a lot of faith, right? I mean, and I hate to say that, but they would have to revamp the entire way they have the cases. All of them would have to go online. And Greg, how the technology gap is with USCIS. Like they would have to, do some really different thinking. And then two, I don't know if they have the people power to dedicate to this massive. We're talking about 100,000 cases. They're going to get below. They would have to what? What would they have to do? Like 50,000?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. The other thing about the Heart Service Center is my understanding was they were initially not planning on doing the 601s and 601As there.
Yeah.
And they were going to leave them alone.
Well,
so, I don't know if they beefed up their staff to be able to handle that, or how that plans changed. They said, well, I do have the notes here. So one is they said as of last week, they were 66% of their positions were filled, and they said that they were on staff, that they would be fully staffed by the end of the new fiscal year, which means that it's going to take another year for them to fill up that other 33%. Now, with that said, they did say they would be at a 12-month processing time a year from now. So, they're trying to do both things at the same time: shrink overall the backlog to 12 months and to fully staff. I don't know what fully staff means, but they say they're 2/3 of the way there right now.
Well, here's a solution for them. And it just drives me insane that this has not crossed the mind or they've rejected at leadership. You're not going to, this ostrich approach on the backlog is ridiculous. Grant everyone an EAD, charge $410, call it a day. You can do it. We don't need legislation. What are they doing there? Because it's a moneymaker, right?
Right. If they did that, it would not be, it's not the perfect solution. Perfect solution is getting these things adjudicated for people, but it would make life a lot better for that backlog community. So they do, and they know they have a lot of authority to do this, and they could do it. It's just I mean, I guess if they really honestly think that they can get these waivers down to 12 months over the next 12 months on there, that would probably be almost as good, but not as good as giving them interim EAD cards. But, that is another thing so maybe it's a good time to start turning over and talking about some of the things that are going on, administratively, some big news.
Let me just interrupt really quickly to get back to Tiffany's question.
Yeah.
It looks like, so this is the 601 case. It looks like the approvals that I pulled were filed in June 2020, August 2021, January 2022, and February 2022.
Interesting. Okay. So not a lot of consistency. All right. So as far as developments, I mean, there have been a few. So we talked about the Heart Service Center thing that happened this week. As far as other developments, I mean, I think one of the ones I mentioned this morning was, regarding visa waiver for Israel. And that's one that has been a hot potato for a number of years. I'm actually think that there's a bigger picture thing that's going on right now with, because normally Biden is not going to give Netanyahu a big win, which this is a huge win for the prime minister. And right now, in a very difficult time politically for him, and the Biden administration is not typically ready to throw a lifeline of any sort to that particular politician. But shows you sometimes how important immigration is to bigger picture issues that are going on. But there is a huge Middle East peace deal that is in the works right now that involves Saudi Arabia, the Palestinians, and the Israelis. And it involves normalizing a peace treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is the big prize that Israel, the Abraham Accords, Israel's been signing peace treaties with the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and others. Saudi Arabia is the big enchilada as far as that goes for them, especially since they basically influence policy across the Middle East. And in exchange, as part of that deal, there's also a peace deal with the Palestinians that the Saudis are working with the Biden administration and trying to negotiate with the Israelis, with the Saudis, and with the Palestinians on a peace deal. But to keep basically it means the end of Netanyahu's government, because he's got a lot of people in that government who are completely opposed to a peace deal with the Palestinians, and it would probably mean that he has to do a new coalition government with center and left parties. But in order for that to all work, he needs to score some political points right now. And the visa waiver announcement this morning, coming after Netanyahu visited the White House a couple of days ago, and the news on the Saudi deal, I think it's all basically part of the same package of things that they're trying to accomplish to get this big deal to happen, which would obviously, be enormous if something like that actually happened. It would probably be the biggest foreign policy news, aside from the Ukraine war in the last 50 years. So that's probably what's going on with the visa waiver news. We also we mentioned before the extension and redesignation of Venezuela for TPS. That's another one that was something that I think the Biden administration really kind of pushes back until the political pressure gets too much, even though they could have announced this weeks ago and not suffered nearly as many negative headlines. But basically, they think that announcement is going to cover 500,000 people, which is huge as far as the extent of that benefit. Of course, that doesn't stop the flow of people that are coming in, but it does deal with this immediate issue. What I think is most interesting, though, is they got the TPS designation, so these people now have to apply for EADs. For initial TPS, they still make you have EAD. For extensions, they'll let you work just on the basis of an announcement. But for an initial one, so how are they going to get all these EADs adjudicated that quickly to get these people working? That's, for me, I'm like, we've litigated on EADs, and we haven't. I guess that they will be using the e-filing system for both the TPS applications and for that. But I've been pushing this idea that they should allow receipts to be the interim EAD document. It should be your receipt, and then you can give them the actual card later on. There's not a lot of risk because most people work illegally or don't work at all. And what's the big deal if they are working legally sooner? They're here or they already have TPS application filed. The worst that could happen is that their TPS application gets denied and they benefited the U.S. economy with their labor for 6 months or so. But I don't think that's just a little too much probably for USCIS to agree to. But it's good that they did TPS. I just have no idea how they're going to be able to get these people working that quickly.
It's just so consistent with how they've treated immigration since the change, where someone has a good idea. They don't talk to anybody apparently at the ground level about how they're going to implement it. And they're like, and then shit hits the fan and they're like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that'd be a huge issue. And now we have to shift resources, and then,
right. Well, and they'll say something like, well, we can't do this because there's a reg. And it's like, well, okay.
Yeah, right.
So do an emergency change that you can do. Or the reg is that's administrative. You don't need Congress to fix that problem for you.
And I will say, I give them a ton of credit. They tried to do the DACA reg. A lot of smart people worked on it, and they sucked up a lot of oxygen and resources doing that. And you know what? It got them nowhere. And so for me, I'm like, you need to start being aggressive with, not playing kind of defensively with, we may get sued over this just from anyone. Listen, if you go out there and grant all U applicants, T applicants, and 601A waiver applicants an EAD tomorrow, work authorization tomorrow, go ahead and let them sue. Because that the next president, if he's not wearing the same stripes, is going to come in and do some crazy ass shit. And you know what? It's going to be shoot first and get me enjoined later. And the way the courts have treated the presidential authority, which is, to me, unstoppable, apparently, he should just be doing it. You just get it out there,
Yeah.
Be a dolphin.
By the way, aside from the big announcement on the TPS for Venezuela, they also made some big changes on EADs that could reduce the workload somewhat for them by announcing that they're going to be doing 5-year EAD extensions for people with adjustment applications filed. This is potentially really good news for Indians in particular, because most people, their adjustment applications don't take, once you file an adjustment application, it's probably 2 years is probably on the long side right now. But there is a group of people that filed when, and then numbers retrogressed, and they could be, have pending adjustment applications for many, many years. So the ability to get EADs in 5-year increments is certainly good news for that population. That was included in the announcements from DHS that came out.
I feel like I'm being such a prick today, but I'm going to say it anyway. What? That's great, but why didn't they do that? Why didn't they move the dates for filing up in October? Right, and then they would have had both things. That would have been monumental.
Yeah, right? No, I agree. Look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of pressure on them. I think more and more. It came in a letter from Congress. There's a lot of advocacy that's happening behind the scenes about the Cyrus Mehta theory. I always call it Cyrus because he's the first person I ever saw that actually explained this legal theory, and it's a really good one, which is that if there's a single visa number that's available and hasn't been used, then if you read 245A, it allows you to, all it says is a visa has to be available. If they just hold one visa back, there's a visa available to every single person, even though they're not using that one, and they could allow everybody to file adjustment applications. And if they did that, that doesn't solve the backlogs, but it does make it possible for everybody to have basic portability after 6 months. And, it's not a green card, but it's close. It's close as far as freedom goes. Once you get that, and once you have 5-year EAD cards, and you have an adjustment application pending, you have a lot of ability to go out and on the market. If you want to work for another employer, you're basically a free agent at that point. You can get better salaries, and there's more
age outs.
Workers. You can start up your own company. You can do work anywhere in the country.
But it protects the kids, right? Of some of these. I mean, it's
I mean, you still have an issue with eventually and then this is another one where USCIS can probably by reg deal with it, but they still are going to eventually want you to do a new labor certification and new other stuff. But that's stuff that I think they can deal with with regs that make it so that you don't need to do that either. And the whole idea, so with portability and all that, I mean, that I think is the regs require that, and they can change that. But that's something they have big things that they could be doing. They also had the case laid out to them. AILA in 2014, when they gave comments to the Obama administration about big ideas for a fix. One of the big ones was not counting derivatives in employment-based cases. So kids and spouse. It's the exact same language for H-4s as for derivatives in the employment-based context, but they use two different interpretations about how they count against the caps. You could triple green card numbers just with that.
There was a case, they litigated that really hard in DC. I think Ira had pushed that, and he had a great argument.
They did for EB-5s, I think.
Well, okay.
But the administration can make the change on their own.
Totally. No. It just shows me that they fought it.
This is the thing that makes me crazy. It's like they won't do things because they're being very afraid of being sued by Stephen Miller and FAIR and those groups. But they don't seem to be that afraid of being sued by their friends.
Yeah.
So it's not too consistent on that. The other big change that we saw this week was the I-539s and no longer taking biometric fees for that. I couldn't tell whether that means the end of biometrics altogether. I mean, they had been basically waiving it in most cases, and I guess that was a COVID rule.
That was from our the Edakuni case on the H-4s, where we kind of got them to waive it, and then the 2-year sunset was coming up because they agreed they for H-4s, and I guess back then.
I don't know whether that's the end of biometrics altogether or just the fee. Hopefully,
I believe it's biometrics for at least for those categories that were part of that for H-4s. They're going to waive.
Right. So that was a COVID change that they made. So I don't know if they, in this announcement, when they say they're waiving the fees, are they reserving their right to do biometrics if they want to, and are just continuing to not do it? That part I don't think was clear.
Yeah. I haven't read it closely. I would have to go back.
The only other thing I will mention that was some news that didn't get a lot of attention this week, and I missed it until I saw somebody pointed it out to me, were in the Unified Regulatory Agenda, where USCIS basically broadcasts what their plans are. They have a couple of rules, proposed rules that I guess are at OMB, Office of Management and Budget, that are fairly close to being released. One is a H-1B proposed rule, which has a lot to do with, there are fixes and things like that they want to have, and there might be some surprises in there. But one of the things that they're going to presumably deal with is the issue that we litigated last year regarding all the fraudulent applications that have been filed by people who beneficiaries, where previously they took the position that that's legal. Now they take the position that that's fraud. But we'll see what they actually do about it. Basically the approach is they could just basically call it fraud and forbid it altogether. But, probably the problem is there are a lot of people who legitimately file more than one H-1B application. Really the way to deal with it is to just change the algorithm so that you have only one chance per person, but give then a person an opportunity to then have multiple applications where they, at the end of the day, can pick which employer they go with or have concurrent employment, but they don't actually improve their odds. That's I think the cleanest solution. We'll see if that's what's actually in that regulation. There was also another regulation on adjustment of status and some big changes there. One I thought that was really interesting. I do a lot of our firm does a lot of R1 visas, and there's a provision in that reg that would allow concurrent filings of adjustment applications with I-360s for religious workers, and they had a bunch of other things that are dealing with the adjustment of status question in that. So those are two big things I think we could see over the next few months. The H-1B one I think is the priority because they want to get that in place before the next law.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, I think part of that is they've announced that all 129s will be electronic next year, required.
Yeah. All right.
So that's a huge. I think. I mean,
I want everything to go electronic, even as much as there are things that I don't like about how their e-filing system. Ultimately, that is their roadmap out of the backlog mess. I mean, they can't do anything about backlogs that are related to things that Congress controls, like green card quotas, but just processing times for things like EADs and I-601As and all this other. They need to have an all electronic system and allow a lot more work to be done by the computers and just leave the humans for sort of the parts where they actually add value, instead of having people manually typing this stuff into computers and all this other time wasters that cause these huge backlogs. So anything else that you guys want to talk about?
I mean, what do you think is going to happen with Taylor Swift and the
2024 senatorial election in Tennessee that she weighed in on this week?
Oh, really?
I didn't see that.
She hates Marsha Blackburn, our senator. They have a real hate thing going on there, and she asked her. She's been pushing voter registration in Tennessee in particular. She definitely wants to influence that election, but I know what you're talking about. Important thing.
My entire football timeline, because I only use social media for things like sports and stuff. I really do. Like, I don't do anything else. And it's like, I was just like inundated. I had to go ask like my wife for updates here. Because Kelsey's also on my fantasy team. So I totally need his head in the game. Like, I can't have this distraction right now.
They seem like a good couple.
You know what? I think the world needs some good news and some hope. I kind of thought that
they're both pretty likable.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's so much. I honestly, it is extremely tough to stay positive out there right now. With the shutdown and it's.
Oh well, we didn't talk about the shutdown as far as what it means for immigration. So let's just talk. Let's end on that happy note on there. So one thing that doesn't get affected are fee-based USCIS applications, which you can still file, I guess, and you still, in theory, get adjudications because that's all funded by user fees as opposed to depending on appropriations from the government, but not all things. So there are some applications that have no fees associated with them. Work will stop on those. But then there are things that sort of are like not fee funded that they depend on in order to be able to work on the fee-based stuff. So I know like at the consulates, for example, that's a problem where nobody's where they don't have like front office staff for people to be able to do appointments to even come in, even though they're paying for a visa fee. I know that it's typically disrupted visa applications at consulates in past shutdowns. But where else? I guess the immigration courts continue.
The detained courts usually continue. The non-detained gets canceled.
Yeah, and then for federal court litigation, DOJ, you have to be tabbed as an essential. They'll have a skeleton crew, but and courts are open, and courts have in the past ordered DOJ to comply with their deadlines, even if there's a shutdown. And so,
interesting.
I know DOJ in the past. What would happen is I was part of the one I think in 16. We had arguments or something or deadlines, and you try to sit there. Oh, we're shut down, and the court would be like, "Yeah, we don't care. We're in business, and so are you." So I don't know some of immigration litigation in the federal courts. That is everywhere. That whether the shutdown will have any impact whatsoever, I don't think it will.
You know, are decisions released during shutdowns?
Yeah, courts are open.
All right,
Yeah.
so they're operating as normal. Okay.
They're essential. I mean, I think the one thing that I heard that is going to be kind of a mess would be the perm, the flag, right? That kind of goes that they take that offline, right?
For that.
Yeah. So, that's going to obviously.
What about websites?
Websites?
Yeah. Do they function as normal?
I don't know. If they take the mouse off the wheel in DC, I think they'll still be running around. Yeah. I mean, I have to believe they're going to keep the lights on.
Data scraping and all that.
I mean, honestly, though, I can write. I could sit here and draft the paragraph that's going to be in every delay case for the next year about how the 5-day shutdown in September made it so that when they came back in, they had to relearn how to process.
Right. That explains the new 10-month delay that they're going to add.
Processing times jump to 7 years, because of a 5-day shutdown. So,
yeah. Well, hopefully it's short. I mean, you never know with these shutdowns. We've had them that they've, I don't know what the longest one is, but I think recall we had one close to a month.
96 there and Gingrich there, whatever.
Yeah, you can't. Everybody's assuming it's going to be super quick, but I don't know.
So I'll share this one thing before we go. I saw our colleague Ava Banach post something saying that U.S. Attorney's Office in one of their one of their mandamus cases requested an indefinite stay on an unreasonable delay action on a USCIS case where their processing isn't affected and the shutdown hasn't even happened. So they're already reaching for it.
All right, we will end there because we all have to get back to our regular work. But hopefully Chuck means it when he says he's ready for next week. I know he means it. I know he's dying to get back, but hopefully the doctors will agree. And we will see you next Wednesday.
All right. Be good out there.
Take it easy, guys. Bye.